But the first order of business tonight is actually a request for your help. We have frequently, in recent months on this show, talked about a specific thing that is catastrophically important to the future of this country, and also, simultaneously, totally, catastrophically boring. This thing is so important, it eclipses every cycle of who's winning and who's losing right now in politics, which party's going to win which election, which president is popular, which president isn't. This is bigger than all of that. This is a beyond the news cycle, beyond the election cycle problem that is about whether or not this country is capable of greatness anymore. Whether or not this country is capable of adapting to the problems that we need to adapt to in order to survive and thrive in this world. Whether or not we as a country can make decisions about what to do about our biggest problems. We've talked about this problem in a lot of different ways on this show in recent months. And people who feel the same way that I do about it often use really dramatic language to try to get across how important it is.
I think that if this pattern continues, you're going to see an inability on part of America to deal with big problems in a very competitive world, and other countries are going to start running circles around us.
How long can we as a country thrive when our chief competitor can order from the top down optimal and we can only produce suboptimal?
Never since the founding of the Republic, not even in the bitter sentiments preceding the Civil War, was such a thing ever seen in this body.
None of that is hyperbole. This is just people who recognize this giant problem we have, who are using appropriately dramatic language to show how giant this giant problem is. And yet, even with all of the drama, even with all of this effort to make us realize how existentially important this problem is for the country, we still have not fixed it. We have not even really yet begun to fix it. And the reason we haven't fixed it, the reason we can't grapple with it, really, I believe, is because ultimately, for all of the dramatic language we use to describe this problem, for all of the exclamation points, for all of what seems like hyperbole but is really just appropriate drama, when it comes down to explaining what this problem really is, it is impossible to get there without using the most boring word in the English language.
Filibuster.
Filibuster. I know, filibuster. I care more about this than I do about almost anything in American public policy today. But I hear that word and it's like, I'm convinced that the reason we cannot cope with this massive problem that quite literally threatens American greatness moving forward in the world is because the word we need to use to talk about it is a really boring word. It's boring to talk process anyway, but talking about process where the ultimate goal is to get people excited about the word filibuster, we are defenseless, frankly, against the tyrannical boredom of this. Watch. Okay, puppy. So the filibuster is a way to block the majority from passing something in the Senate. Stay with me. This is important. Used to be used really rarely. The filibuster was used once in the used once in the 1950s, but then just last session it was used 139 times. Puppy, 139 times in the last session. The filibuster was never supposed to make everything take. Stay with me. Everything. It wasn't ever supposed to make everything take 60 votes in the Senate. Oh yeah, okay. See, having a filibuster on every vote means that essentially nothing can pass. This is hamstringing the whole U.S. government, puppy. We can't make policy anymore, even with clear majorities in favor of things the president wants to pass. Now, puppy, hello? It used to take 67 votes to get cloture to stop a filibuster. They changed that back in 1975 to make it 60 votes instead of 67. They could just change it again. It's just a Senate rule. Filibuster. It's very important.
Yeah. So
I can't keep the puppy awake in talking about this, and neither can you. There have been countless efforts to try to keep the metaphorical puppy awake on this issue, to keep the country focused on this as a problem, to avoid saying the most boring word of all time. We now talk about the supermajority. Instead of saying filibuster, we say supermajority. I mean, supermajority does have the virtue of having the word super in it, so that's sort of exciting. And of course, for the idea of just getting rid of the thing that is the most boring word of all time, there's a phrase that they use sometimes. It's the nuclear option. That's very exciting, very bombastic, nuclear. A further refinement of that issue yielded yet another new term, the constitutional option, which, yeah, exactly. In order to talk about this most important and yet most boring thing in all of American politics and government, without using the actual word for it, sometimes we have used the iconic, beautifully acted cinematic scene in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, showing the way they used to do this thing that dare not speak its name.
Just get up off the ground. That's all I ask. Get up there with that lady that's up on top of this Capitol dome, that lady that stands for liberty. Take a look at this country through her eyes if you really want to see something. And you won't just see scenery. You'll see the whole parade of what man's carved out for himself after centuries of fighting.
Compelling, right? Better than using the word to describe what it is that he's doing there. There are ways that people have tried to make interesting this most important and yet most boring thing in all of American politics and government. But ultimately, even these rebranding efforts have failed because when it comes down to explaining what needs to be done, how to correct this existential problem, you sort of ultimately have to use this word, filibuster. And using the word filibuster makes us all puppies in bowls of water. We can't handle it for the boredom. And so we need your help. The most boring, most important thing in America needs a makeover. It needs a new name. Think about this as a big Venn diagram. You are here. You are at the nexus of really boring and really important. Fixing this problem is essential to the country right now. We are either a country that can make policy or we are a country that cannot make policy. And if we are a country that cannot make policy, we quite literally cannot compete with the rest of the world as the Chinas and Indias and Brazils and Southeast Asias of the world sprint ahead and leave us mired in debt and pollution and traffic and dial-up internet connections while they sprint ahead. If we're ever going to use our government to do anything for our country again, we've got to recognize and defeat the thing that is stopping us from doing that. And we can't do that recognizing and defeating if every time we start to talk about it, we sleep until our nose goes underwater. And so the filibuster must be renamed. There has to be a not boring way to talk about a problem this important. I, for one, am optimistic about this. I believe that if we can just bear to think about it for more than 5 seconds before we fall asleep or get distracted or need to look at pretty pictures, I believe we could actually grapple with what it would take to fix it. Americans know we have a problem here. The New York Times polled on this, and I swear, because they didn't use the word filibuster in their question, 50% of people said, yes, this undemocratic thing should be fixed. Look at the lengths they had to go to in the question here. As you may know, the Senate operates under procedures that effectively require 60 votes out of 100 for most legislation to pass, allowing a minority of as few as 41 senators to block a majority. Do you think that this procedure should remain in place, or do you think it should be changed so that legislation is passed with a simple majority? That was the question. If you've got the time to ask it like that, then yeah, 50% of people say, heck, kill that undemocratic nonsense. 44% said keep it. If you don't, though, have the time to ask it at great length like that, going around it in great detail to not have to say the word filibuster that makes everybody's eyes glaze over, if you don't have the time, the country seizes up and dies because of a needlessly, shockingly sclerotic government that we can't grapple with fixing. What we need to get America focused on whether or not we're going to solve this problem, solve any of our problems, whether or not we're going to be able to compete in the future with other countries, what we need is a snappy descriptor. It should accurately capture what the problem is, it should be memorable, and it should not make people hearing about it do this.
Doing it, because this is the way
All right, so please send us your ideas. We really mean it. We're really going to try to do this. Go to our website, rachel.msnbc.com. Click where you see it says The Filibuster Challenge. We are going to pool the ideas that we get together. We will then pick a winner. If you win, you don't get much. You get a Rachel Maddow Show sweatshirt. You get a Rachel Maddow Show mug that looks like this, made in the USA. Most importantly, though, you get the thanks of your nation. America needs your help. And if you believe, as I do, that the world needs American leadership, then frankly, the world needs your help too. Wake the puppy up. Help America confront this devastatingly important, devastatingly boring problem. Be a hero. Rachel.msnbc.com.